Back in 1991, a few of us got together, Francis and Charles and I, and along with another group of people, Pat Coble, J. Thomas Fitzpatrick, John Fleming, Ralph Longstaff, John Moores, Frank Pelletier, Charles Up, and to discuss about all the artifacts leaving the county, and we needed a place to collect them and save them.
And I was one of the beginning persons that worked to put this Southern Heuristic Agricultural Museum together, along with Barry Campbell and Charles Upton, and we probably spent the most time, the three of us, deciding how we were going to do this and where we could go. And we did, at that point in time, we did not have a building, and there was a barn at the Bird Farm, which is the Fulton High School area, and we contemplated on it and looked it all over, and even bought a fellow who used to live up here that moved buildings down in Ellsworth, Dusty Haslam. And he came up and looked it over, and the biggest problem there was it had to be moved off its present location because it was too close to the school. But then where do we go with it, and security and all, if we had moved it to the other end of that piece of ground, security probably would have been more of a problem. So we kept meeting and talking, and Charles was working for the town of Holton at that time for in the Economic Development Division. So Charles was he spent a lot of time beating this around with us and asking questions and ideas. So we moved along for how many years?
Well, we were 10 years, pretty near 10 years before this building come up for sale. Finally, this school closed in '99, and the town had a special town meeting in 2001 in June. And at that time, Charles and Francis and I got together and decided this was now or never. So we had Francis represent us that night at the town meeting, and you can tell them what happened after this.
These are my two friends, so they sent me to the Littleton Select Board to barter for a school building that we all knew the price was $50,000, because that's what the board had put on it for a price. But there was two other parties that wanted it at the same time, and one was turn this building into a boys' home for boys, and the other company, they were selling surplus items, building supplies and whatever, and they wanted it, but they didn't want to pay any big money until just a little bit each year for 5 years, and then a balloon payment. So I gave the pitch here that it would be ideal for a museum, and we was starting to build some pretty good momentum and some interest from the locals, and how we were going to do it. We were going to salvage as many of the artifacts that people had used and worked with here over their lifetimes. So yes, we got they granted it to us, and we didn't have the money, and they gave us 1 year to come up with the money.
And at the end of the year, we didn't have much money to save, didn't we, Francis?
No, we did not.
So we had to go see our banker, and he was a pretty good feller. He let us have the money, and we told him we didn't really want a payment book, but we would try to pay the interest if we didn't have any money. Get back before we started our museum, once we got the year to come up with the money, there was a list of people that I like to read that they all helped us on the start. We all kicked in $75 because we didn't have any money. So we kicked in $75 to get paperwork done. And another thing, we told our lawyer, which was Phil Jordan, what we was doing. He said we're crazy. But he said, if you're going to work for nothing, I'll work for nothing.
That's correct.
But anyway, Charles Upton, Richard Corey, Francis Fitzpatrick, John Fleming, Max Lenz, Terry Nason, Leland Longstaff, Ralph Longstaff, Tommy McAfee, Roscoe Tingley, Albert Williams, Colby Shaw, and myself, Barry Campbell, all kicked in $75 to try to get her off the ground. Pay the light bill. And the first year or two, it was pretty slim pickings, but we survived.
Because that's when we got started. Once we got in here, we did rent a room across the way here, because it was a big open space, but we had to heat it, keep the heat on. But we did rent that space to a church, a group that was looking for some room, and we beat around some other ideas of how to bring in some money, and it just wasn't happening. And then probably the first thing to give us some income was the suppers. When they started putting the suppers on, then we got a great response with that. And with that response, you didn't just get money for the suppers. People would come and say, well, I kind of like what you're doing, and they would leave us some money. And there's been some pretty substantial donations just because people are happy to see what's happening here. And at the same time, we didn't have very much to put in a building. So we kept asking people what they had or what were they going to do with some of their artifacts. Barry and I probably had collected the most. We had them stored in our areas. One of the first items we got was the John Deere MT tractor. And for our age group, that was part of the agriculture program at Holton High School. And then that had ended, and the tractor was just sitting over in what is now the Region 2 building. And I was following it along, and I thought, well, something's going to happen. If we could get that would be a great piece, because a number of people can familiarize themselves in the area with that tractor. And I went to the school board, and I presented what I would like to do with it. And the answer came pretty quick from the chairman. He said, listen, we got a lot more problems here than a tractor. You go take the tractor and do what you're going to do with it. And so that opened the gate. So we took that tractor, and I kept it in my barn for probably 4 or 5 years because we really didn't have a museum. But we got it painted down in Region 2, and it's with us today. So that's the way this project has come together. Most people have said, well, we like what you're doing. And they pulled their pocketbooks out and really supported us. I'm thinking we went maybe 3 years to burn the mortgage.
Yeah, it was 3.5, I think. I think we went a year without making any payments.
Correct.
And we paid just the interest, and then it was 1.5 years or 2 years later.
Isn't that so? But it was I didn't personally was not here myself. I was out of town at that time. But when I came back, it was all paid for totally. The bank was happy, and the mortgage had got burned on the stage.
Yeah, we had Cedric Shaw was one of the people to help with burning, and my mother was the other one, Dr. Campbell.
We didn't have any to start with. And
Well, we started with the $75 a piece, everybody kicked in.
right.
So we had that times 13. And times were slim, because every meeting we would wonder how we're gonna pay the light bill and the fuel bill, but there was always something worked out. We rented the building too, and, you know, we'd be right down to the bottom, just scratching the bottom, and somebody would rent it, and would give us a little more money, and then we made we had 2 raffles a year. A lawnmower in the spring and a gun in the fall, and we did fairly well on that. Memberships was a big thing, and a lot of people were real generous. And rentals, raffles, it took everything to make it work, and volunteers. We had great volunteers.
I think we got into the raffle bit, and it's been very, very good to us. But I think, if I'm saying this right, I think the gun that I won, and I think that was our first raffle, because we were scheming how to make some money. And just a little tidbit, I was in Marsville and actually Potatoes, and this fella came in, and he was a former retired farmer, and he was having a hunter's breakfast, and he wanted some potatoes to cook. So we took care of him, and he turned to me, and as I say, he was no salesman, but he said, would you want to buy a ticket on a gun? I said, so his tickets were $1 each, or 6 for $5, and big-hearted me bought 1 ticket for $1, and 2 or 3 months later, I guess, my wife got a call and said, well, your husband won a nice gun. So I come down with the gun, and it was I think 306, 306, wasn't it?
Yeah.
With a scope and all, in a nice case, and I said to Charles Upton, I said, well, what are we going to do with the gun? And he said, well, we can't have any guns in here. He said, that's the reason people will break in. He's very adamant about it. So we have probably everything in here but a gun. And that's all right. Charles I think we were right, we listened to him. But we sold the tickets for $10 each, and that's what we still do today. We have a very good participation. So how many do we sell now?
We sell 550 tickets
Okay.
On the lawnmower and 550 on the gun.
On the gun.
And I think Charlie Johnson had it. Seems like he had a shotgun one year too, that it was like brand new, and he donated it to us.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was the same year we sold yours, or it might have been the next year.
Well, I think we found out that worked for us.
Yeah, everybody needs another gun.
Wanted a gun. Yeah.
But we've done real good. We've had a lot of projects over the years. We put in a new furnace downstairs for the north end, and then a different year we put one in for the museum part, and then we also did a snow building along with
Yes.
Gail and Cole donate some money toward that.
To back up and tell about the reason we put the hot air furnace in the article section, which is from the office down, there's doors. I happened to be in Florida and didn't get involved till I come back. It was all cleaned up. But this was a hot water system, and it was old and steam, and the whole area got steamed down there. And as I say, I was away. When I come back, they all would tell me how hard damn they had to work to dry it all out, wipe everything down. And there's a few remnants you can see where a few pieces got damaged, but come out of it very well, really.
Very well for the
and that's the last thing we wanted to have happen here. So we talked about how we fix that. So we cut them pipes right off, and it's strictly a hot air system now. So there's no more water down in that area. So we've had some challenges, but we've always been able to overcome, keep going. And I think everybody that's worked around here should be proud of it, because, you know, we've gone 20 years and we seem to have our oars in the water here now. Things it moves along.